So, a few days ago, Jagex allowed content creators early access to Necromancy again. Now, I didn't get to go to the first playtest of Necromancy, but let me tell you, I did make sure I was at this one. No way was I missing out a second opportunity, and one so close to the actual release date. And so in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my actual impressions of a few things regarding Necromancy. Now, of course, there's some things I can talk about, some things I can't talk about to preserve the experience for players on release, but I can tell you about my general combat experience and impressions of the actual skill, and I can also talk about a few other things as well. And so we'll get to that in just a minute. But first of all, I just want to give a huge thank you to every JMod that was involved in making this happen. The day itself went really smoothly, and it was just a great experience overall and a really good opportunity. You were all very helpful. Like, I don't know, it was just good. So thank you so much. Anyway, let's talk about Necromancy, shall we? So I went into this playtest with a perspective of wanting to see how it's going to look for the new player experience, a returning player experience. As to be honest, as silly as it might sound, my biggest excitement with the news of this skill being released and the way it's being designed and stuff was about the fact that Jagex said this is going to be designed to help newer players get into combat and be more user-friendly and be better at teaching them. To me, this sounds insanely good because the amount of players that have joined this game that I know of personally, like in real life, or people that I've introduced through Discord and stuff, and been like, try the game. They've quit because of combat so confusing or just feels weird. That this is a good thing to me, and I want more players to play this game, and so that was the way that I was looking at how does this skill sort of seem in the early levels. Well, just let me tell you, the Jagex have nailed it. It is good. It is good, guys. If you're excited, you should be more excited. You're not excited enough. They've nailed it. They've hit it on the head. And if you are someone who is looking at this video thinking, do I return to RuneScape now after a big break? Or do I start the game now? Or I'm an old school player, but I'm interested in what this Necromancy thing is. Freaking drop everything and just RuneScape 3. Necromancy. This is where you want to be. Okay, maybe don't drop everything, but Necromancy, they've done a really good job. And from the actual beginner player perspective, my initial thoughts are, I think this is going to be really good for the game. The skill itself isn't too confusing to get used to. There's really in-depth tutorials and guides on stuff in the game. You are not going to need to go to the wiki or YouTube to figure stuff out with this. It will tell you step by step on exactly what to do. And a few of the issues that I've had with combat in the past that caused combat to be pretty confusing in certain places in the first place, it's not like that with Necromancy. They have done things that make total sense for a beginner to get into the skill. So if you are someone who doesn't do a lot of combat, if you are someone who hasn't tried it yet, or if you're someone who tried the game in the past and didn't really get into the combat but wished you could have done, this is the way into combat. This is what you should be doing, in my opinion. This should do great things for the game. And I do believe that there is going to be some sort of directioning to you actually using Necromancy when you become a new player to the game, when you start a brand new account. But I'm not 100% sure about how it's going to go about doing that. From what I can see, the new player experience is like top notch. So other than the new player experience, what about my overall thoughts on the combat itself? Now, I didn't get to test every single inch and tiny little thing of all the combat. But from what I did get to test, which was like early on, and then a little bit against some high-level bosses that we've currently got in game, as silly as it sounds, the way I would go about explaining the difference between the old combat styles and the new combat styles in the way of how it feels to use would be: melee, magic, and ranged were made when EOC released. Necromancy's being made in 2023 with all of that other stuff and the stuff they've learned in the past in mind. And you can tell. The combat gameplay feels way more smooth and intuitive. It feels like it flows together a hell of a lot better. And it's overall fun to use, like very fun to use in my opinion. Combat with Necromancy feels impactful. I would argue probably more impactful than the other three combat styles as well. And you make decisions that actually feel meaningful. Now, I don't mean that with other combat styles the decisions don't feel meaningful, but in other combat styles you're kind of just looking at what is going to hit the hardest next, whereas with Necromancy it doesn't necessarily always feel that way. The decisions you make, from what I could tell, felt like you in your head wanted a specific decision and you did that. For example, I'll be releasing a video as well that shows all the different abilities and stuff, so I can talk about some of the abilities and how they work. For example, there's an ability called Finger of Death. Now, the Finger of Death ability is going to do a really high amount of damage. It hits hard, but this costs you 60% adrenaline to use. Now, the way adrenaline and stuff works with Necromancy is different as well. You don't have thresholds, you just have some abilities that cost a certain amount of adrenaline, and then you have some abilities that don't cost adrenaline and give you adrenaline instead. Now, on the tooltip of Finger of Death, you're going to see here that it says for each stack of necrosis, you reduce the adrenaline cost by 10%. So as in your mind, this thing of stacking up your necrosis stacks to be able to then just fire off Finger of Death again and again and again, because as you can see, this doesn't have a cooldown, just the global cooldown, and you can fire it off again and again and again. So you could maybe charge this up, get yourself some necrosis stacks, and then just fire off this ability over and over again. Or you can use it as soon as you get access to it and cost yourself maybe the 60% adrenaline or 50% or whatever it's going to be. There's some other abilities as well that work similar to this. You'll use soul sap and collect up some souls, and then you can either choose to release one soul at a time, which then has a stun, or you can choose to release all of the souls at once in one tick and do all of the damage at the same time and not get the stun. So you can hit 3 times really hard, or you can hit once really hard and do a stun. Basically, you can weigh these things up, and the decisions you make feel worthwhile deciding them. One thing I did notice is the scaling of the damage is really smart. I like what they did with this, and let me explain. The ability Soul Sap is going to give you the souls, like I mentioned, up to 3 souls can be stored at once. And like I said, you have the option to release either one of them at a time with a stun, or then all 3 of them at once. But the value of these souls doesn't change in terms of damage output. So the ability that releases them 1 at a time, and the ability that releases them 3 at a time, they hit the same amount of damage in terms of each soul. So obviously, if you release 3, you in that one tick, at that one specific instance of damage, you hit 3 times as much, but you don't get the stun. But you're not deciding between this ability also hits harder and this one hits a little bit less. It just feels more intuitive. Your decision making is based on, do I need a stun or do I need a big burst of damage? It's just really freaking good. I don't know. Personally, I like this style of combat, and I think it's absolutely great. And then, of course, this is Necromancy. We are going to be conjuring different things to be able to give us different effects. And they also have their own sub-ability, which you unlock later on too, which means that you summon it, and then you use the same keybind to trigger that sub-ability. And yes, you can conjure everything at once as well. Overall, I'm not going to go much more into the actual specifics of combat, because I'm going to be talking about some of the abilities in another video. But Jagex have done a really good job with actually balancing this for newer player and making it make sense. As for you high-level players, don't let this make you think that it's going to be too easy and a little bit boring for you players, because trust me, the limit on this and how far you can go and push this is going to be pretty high, and there's going to be a lot that you can do with Necromancy as a high-level player as well. So it's rewarding for beginners, and it's rewarding for high-level players too. Now we're going to talk about rituals. Rituals are the non-combat aspect of Necromancy, but is just as important, and you will be doing this. You have to do this. Trust me, it is an important part of it. But honestly, it's very logical and intuitive, and the game shows you how to do it really well. Personally, at first, I was like, oh, this is all going to be really confusing, and I'm going to hate it, and it's just going to stress me out, and I'm not going to know which one to do, and how to do it, and what's worth doing, and I'm just going to waste my time, and this is pretty much how I felt, right? But you're not going to feel like that. It's pretty straightforward. But rituals are the skilling aspect of this, I guess. It still gives you necromancy experience, gives you some other rewards that you're going to want to take part of as well. But don't panic about it if you're someone who thinks, I'm going to have to wait for a guide for this bit. You're not. The game has all the guides you're going to need. It makes total sense, and it gives you the option to fully AFK or to get involved with it and get more rewards out of it as well. To put it simply, you're pretty much going to be offering some items in the middle and then putting down the right little symbols on the floor, which the game tells you what to put. You don't have to work it out. So for anyone who was wondering about this part, it's going to be nice and intuitive and simple, just like everything else in the skill. It's really good, it's engaging, and it's just fun and it's easy to understand. So the final thing for me to talk about in this video is just going to be my experience of using this against current bosses in the game. Well, for those of you that watch me on stream, you'll know that I visit Death's office pretty damn often, and well, today was no difference in that case, because I didn't actually have any food or supplies to kill these bosses with. I just thought I'd go in and try normal mode Karapak with the gear that we had for it, and well, I died again and again and again. But for the time that I did get to experience the actual combat against Karapak, it feels good, it feels great, it feels fine, but a lot of it was confusing because I didn't have any keybinds set up. I didn't know what abilities I was using. I didn't really get to test it against some of the high-level bosses, unfortunately. I can't wait to. I think it's going to be really, really good, and from the experience that I did have, it feels good, it feels smooth, it feels more engaging, it just feels more intuitive. Like the same words I've been using the whole way through. But yeah, my experience was pretty much more Death's Office than anything else. Didn't have any overloads or any potions or anything. I was using wine as food, I think, at one point, because I just didn't have anything else, because this wasn't my account. So overall, though, it's a fun combat style. You guys are going to really enjoy it, in my opinion. If you're not hyped, get hyped. It's big, massive hype. It's so exciting, and I cannot wait. So other than that, the outro of this video is just going to be Jagex. Thank you once again for the opportunity to do this. It's really, really cool to be able to share my experience with the viewers and stuff beforehand, and also just getting a look at stuff. Anybody who's wondering, I'm not racing towards the end game of Necromancy. I'm not going to try and be in the top people to 120 or anything like that. I'm just going to enjoy it at my own pace. Yes, I'll probably do a long stream or something, but I'm just going to enjoy it as it is. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all are incredibly excited, maybe even more so now. But other than that, I will catch you all in the next video. See you later, guys.